What's up, Sen Squad? Welcome back to another Brawl Stars video, and today we are going to be making the ultimate tier list for the current meta this December in Brawl Stars. And now you might be thinking, what on earth gives me the right to say that this is the ultimate tier list when I don't play this game professionally? And that's a good question. But the thing is, this tier list is not mine. What I did is I combined every tier list that I could find on YouTube currently and averaged them all and combined them all into one single tier list that should theoretically be one of the most accurate. The whole theory behind this is that when people are guessing at a certain value, when you have enough people, it tends to be that the same proportion of people are going to overestimate that value as the number of people who are going to underestimate that value. And so if you average everyone's responses together, you get really close to the accurate, correct value. So I thought this would be really interesting to apply to tier lists in the game, which you see so many of, often causing a lot of discussion. So since I myself might not have any unique opinions to bring to the table, we can bring math to the table and see if we can come up with an accurate tier list just by averaging everyone else's together. So to get these sort of values that we can actually combine together, for every tier list that I found, I took those numbers from 1 to 40, wrote them all down in a spreadsheet, and for the tier lists that grouped up a bunch of brawlers into one specific tier, I assigned every brawler in that tier the exact same placement. So for example, if it was the top 5 brawlers, there's someone in first place, second place, third place, fourth place, and fifth place. So on average, I would just assign each brawler their third place. And now that is going to be slightly underestimating whatever the top brawler may be, but it is also overestimating what the fifth place brawler may be by an equal amount. So in the end, I think this was the best and fairest way to do it when I was getting numbers from tier lists that just grouped everyone into their own specific tiers. And so in total, I was actually only able to find 8 tier lists that I was able to convert into numbers. And that is a relatively small sample size. It was a bit less than I was hoping for, but I literally just could not find any more for the current meta. So the fact that the sample size is relatively small means that the data is going to be a bit less relevant, but I still think it's going to be fairly accurate and pretty interesting to look at the results. And I'll make sure to link all of these different tier lists down in the descriptions in case you want to go check them out for yourself. There's a mix of really popular ones and videos that had like 2 views by the time I was looking at them. And they're also from different locations, so that also sort of averages out the fact that there are different metas in different locations around the world. So I tried to do the best I could with the data that I could find on YouTube, but let's now get into the results of what happened when I averaged all of these different numbers for every single brawler together. So this is the resulting tier list that I was able to produce. They're ranked by this average number that I got from just averaging their placement in all 8 tier lists, and I've labeled that specific average at the end of each brawler's bar. So at the top we have Spike, and this was a pretty interesting result because Spike actually in none of the tier lists was definitively ranked the best brawler, but yet after averaging the placements he did come out on top by a somewhat significant amount. And I think this is just because some of the other top brawlers had 1 or 2 tier lists where they were ranked a bit lower than you might expect. But Spike certainly is a really good brawler in the current meta, and he was never ranked less than 4th place. But then again, that is the fact that if he was ever placed in an S tier on a tier list, some brawlers who may be slightly lower than 4th place would still be given a 4th place. So just keep that in mind. Then the other top brawlers there, like Amber, Max, Carl, Colette, they all seem to make a lot of sense. They were ranked highly in basically every tier list. I think we can all agree they're really good brawlers. Brock is a bit lower than I would have expected. I think that's just because for one of the tier lists, his gadget might have come out after it was released. So maybe he should be a bit higher up there if I made sure that that last tier list was up to date, but I was already low on numbers for tier lists as it is, so I thought it would still make sense to include that since the data was still relevant for all the other brawlers. And all the brawlers in the middle, I somewhat agree with them. I think for the most part, the brawlers are in the right positions, and especially as we get towards the bottom, I think that's pretty accurate. And Shelly in last place certainly is very accurate. So this is the resulting order. I guess you can let me know what you think of it personally. I'm sure there will still be plenty of people who disagree with it, and that's fine, but I think this is really interesting to just see the data, and now you can also see the gaps between the different brawlers. So if there are a bunch of brawlers that are really close together, you can sort of assume they're just tied. And in the list where you have to rank every single brawler, it can sometimes be a bit unfair to brawlers that are ridiculously close together to be forced to give them different positions. So I think that these averages convey a lot more information when you can see how big or how small the gap is between 2 consecutive brawlers. And you might notice that the coloring of each brawler's bars is very specific, and that corresponds to the standard deviation of each of these results. Once again, because the sample size is pretty small, you can just expect that the standard deviation is going to vary a lot between brawlers, but for the most part, it makes sense. I color-coded it so that blue is the lowest standard deviation, followed by the normal green, and as you slowly get closer to the orange color, that corresponds to an increase in the standard deviation. So you can see a lot of those brawlers in the middle who have the orange and yellow bars means they had a higher standard deviation, so their data points fluctuated a lot more and weren't as consistent around the average. So that means that their placement is a lot more controversial and can vary a lot between different people. And that sort of makes sense that they're all in the middle, because I feel like a lot of those middle brawlers are really close, since none of them are really used a lot competitively, but none of them are definitively bad either. So they're in that sort of gray zone where it's really hard to distinguish which ones are better than another. So that's why I think we have those really high standard deviations in that center area. And towards the top and the bottom, it's a lot easier to be definitively this brawler is a really good top tier brawler or this brawler is absolute garbage. So that's why I think that the tier lists I looked at were more likely to agree on those top and bottom brawler placements rather than those brawlers in the middle. So that's basically going to wrap it up. I'm actually really excited to maybe do this in the future if I get a larger sample size of tier lists, because I think the resulting tier list is just going to get more and more accurate whenever I have more people's opinions to factor in it. Even if it's bad opinions, we'll have enough bad opinions overestimating brawlers as we do bad opinions underestimating brawlers. So everything is appreciated. Hopefully I'll find a lot more tier lists for future metas that I can use to create more ultimate tier lists like this. But that's going to be it. Make sure to join the Send Squad by subscribing and turning on notifications and enabling your notifications in settings as well. Otherwise you won't be notified when I post awesome videos like this one. But that's all for today, guys. So see you later.